Hello and welcome to everyone. This is the December meeting of Integration Down Under. We're going to go ahead and get started. The recording will be available on our YouTube channel shortly after the meeting. And basically, we'll get started. So just to remind you of the organizers, we have Martin, Dan, Renee, Wagner, and myself. And tonight we have Alessandro basically delivering a Logic app update. So basically, it's interesting because I always think that it's so hard to keep up with some of these updates. So it's a good recap to catch the things that I've missed and things like that. So let me go ahead and hand the presentation over to Alessandro, and he can take us through his talk. So let me pass the control to you. And if you want to share your screen.
Yep. So,
okay,
so you guys can see the screen, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah. So the talk today that I'm gonna do. First of all, thanks for inviting me to do this presentation. It's I know how hard it is, like working together with Wagner. I know how hard it is to keep a user group. So thanks a lot, and how I'm glad to be here to make this talk. The idea that I come up with this for this talk was just to do, as you said, recap of the year on what happened with logic apps. Right. So I put the title as Azure Integration Services because that's the brain or the name that Microsoft is using. But I'm gonna mostly focus on what happened with logic apps. What were the new features that were implemented based on the build, integrate, and ignite. So I'm mostly gonna focus on that. So my name is Alessandro. I work at Theta. I've been working with them for a little bit over 1 year. Before that, I was working. I have most of my experience in Brazil. Been working with BizTalk since 2006, I guess, and I have been working with Logic Apps for the past 2.5 years. Not just Logic Apps, but also all the integration technologies that are part of the Azure. So here's my Twitter handle, Alessandro Moura. Here's my blog, so you guys can go check it out. What I've been posting. Mostly they are related with Logic Apps. I've been planning to post also about BizTalk. Hopefully this is going to be happening next year probably. So the agenda that I put together to make this presentation, I went back to the sessions that were presented for build, ignite, integrate, and also those live webcasts that John Fancy and Kevin Lam they did this year, to see what were the new stuff that just that were announced, right? So that's the base of the presentation that I'm gonna be doing today. Some of the stuff, as you see here, I put two things that I didn't even saw that happening in any of the presentations or build or ignite or even the webcast, and they were just there. So that's like the stuff that showed up in Logic Apps that I just realized some time later. So I'm gonna talk, starting in this sequence, I'm gonna talk about the how to work with complex conditions, how to work with this schema validation for requests, how to work with tracked properties in the designer, and how to make a reference to them, right? There are 3 or 4 ways to work with those properties. How to work with split on, talking a little bit about Azure Integration Services platform, talking a little bit about the ICE environment. I'd like to have a demo on that one, but didn't have the private preview access. And I think that even if I did, I couldn't have done any presentation on that. So we're still waiting to see how that's gonna, show up for us. Talking about managed service identity, it's a little bit more about split-on updates, what it means a lazy if, what it means a token for sub-properties in a Foreach, how to work with VS Code, and then later we're going to show also trigger conditions and custom tracking ID. So I put together this presentation, mostly working with demos, right? So I'm going to show some theory, but most of the time I'm going to be switching to the browser to show the coding logic gaps. Okay. If you guys have any questions during the presentation, just send in the chat, so you can make your questions. I can reply maybe at the end of the session, so just to keep the sequence going well. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk is about the complex conditions. So this has been released, I think, after on or after build. So there was some talk about that. The thing is, like, before we have the complex conditions in place, that this is the way that we were working with, right? So we had to make this kind of nested expressions. In case I want to have, like, for example, a end condition with making an equals and a greater, I would do something like this. So it is okay to work up to this level, but more than that, it becomes too cumbersome to see that expression working fine. And normally I struggle a little bit to see how many parentheses I missed to make sure that's working. I had to switch back to, I don't know, Notepad++, for example, to make sure I have everything in the right place. So that's the way we use nested expressions before, right? They released this new way of working with these complex conditions, and now it's much easier to work in the designer, not just the designer, but also on the code view. So the difference is it's huge in terms of what you see of those expressions, right? So have a end here in that JSON construct, right? And then I have the equals expression to make comparison between the value that came through the trigger and a constant value that I have here. And then I have a second one. So it's quite different the way we build those expressions. And in my point of view, is is much easier to understand what's going on and how we are going to work with those expressions and logic gaps. So that's the first thing that I saw as important to mention that happened during the year. Sometimes we were aware or we follow the conversations, the presentations that logic gaps team did. Sometimes we did not. This new feature just showed up in the Azure portal. Another thing that they released, another feature, was the request schema validation. So basically, you have the chance to turn on schema validation, and based on what you define as the schema for the HTTP request, you're going to receive the message, or actually the logic app is going to receive the message or not, right? So basically, it validates the incoming request with the schema. If it matches, goes to the logic app, so the logic app starts. If it doesn't match, 400 is going to be returned back to the client, saying exactly what was the error. So as you can see here, I have, for example, the properties active, client name, and order ID. So active is a Boolean type, client name is a string type, order ID is a integer type, right? So in case someone tried to pass in the active a string or anything that is not a Boolean, is going to return back saying, okay, you have a 400 bad request. And the reason is that the active field doesn't match the type that it was supposed to be. So it's very clear on what is the error that happened with that request. And you don't have to handle that. On the good side, you don't have to handle that. In the bad side, you don't have the tracking of the incoming request. So if someone asks you, okay, I did a request and it failed, and I don't know why, because they don't have access to the HTTP response or something like that. So you don't have a way to tell what happened, because you don't have access to that log. So that's another feature that was happening with the request schema validation. Another feature that they released was the tracked properties in the designer. So before this change in the designer, you had to go just to the source code of the logic apps, and you had to manually input this information in the logic app, right? So they released this tracked property in the designer, and you could do just on the left side, you could add the name you want that you show in the log analytics. So all those properties you configure here, they're going to the log analytics, right? So in the left side, you put the name you want to be showing up in log analytics. In the right side, you put exactly what you want to capture. So you have 4 options here to capture information, right? You can capture at any point, you can capture information from the trigger. So in any action you wanna capture information, you can capture from the trigger. So it doesn't matter much which action it is. So if there's an action in the same logic app, you can capture information from that trigger. For actions, inputs and outputs, you can only capture for the action itself. And you have those few options here, right? You can use the action inputs body, or you can have the outputs here passing the name of the action you wanna capture. So any one of them is gonna work just fine. And another one that they released during the build was the split on, right? So you could specify how you want to handle your logic app. So let's say you have an array of products being received in the logic app. Instead of receiving all the information in a single message and then doing like a for each inside your logic app, you can just split right in the trigger. It's similar to, for those that works with or that worked with Beanstalk, it's similar to an envelope in the request, right? So you define in which level the message is going to be breaked. It needs to be an array, and then the logic app, each logic app is going to receive one of these messages to be handled by that particular logic app. Let me switch here to the browser. So let me do these demos about each one of those guys here. So let me find the first one is the complex conditions. That one I don't have to execute much. It's more to show the code. So this is basically what I did to have the nested expressions, the complex conditions, right? So this is one scenario where I'm trying to do a dual validation here with the and, where I have a validation of if a particular field contains a specific value with the equals, or I'm checking with if the value that I received is higher than 1000. So it's a very simple condition, but the more you add, the more complex it's going to be. So with and, if I want to add a second a third validation, I could do something like this, and then add one more validation here. So if I made this right, it's gonna save the logic gaps. So the more you add, the more complex it's gonna be, the harder it's gonna be to read this kind of expression. So with this way that they are doing the constructs, much simpler. You can add another row, and you can say something like I did before. So it's much easier than trying to do this, because let's say you, in the middle of this expression, you messed up, you forgot a parenthesis, and then it doesn't save anymore. You need to go and dig what was wrong with this expression. So this new construct is much simpler. And if you go to the code view, is also simple inside the code view. So both the designer and the code view, they are much better to understand what's going on. So this is about the complex conditions. The next one is going to be the request schema validation. So okay, so I have this guy here. And I'm configuring, oh, sorry, let me switch back. So I have this schema that we can see properly here. So let me open here. So this is my schema, right? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields where the active is going to be a Boolean, client name is going to be string, order ID is going to be an integer, order total is going to be a number, and status can be a string or null. And except for the status field, all the other fields, they are required. So I need to pass that information in the request. What I did here to make sure that this validation is happening is to enable the schema validation. It's a very simple flag. And then I can use Postman to make this call. So let's say I forget to pass the order total. Whenever I try to make the request, I receive a response say, first, 400 bad request. And it says also that order total required properties are missing from object. Order total path body. It's also saying that activity is expected to be Boolean, but it got an integer. So it's quite cool. So the client knows exactly what is wrong with that request. So if I try to fix this, now I just got the error about the total. And I can pass some information for the order total. Now it's gonna be, accepted by the logic gaps. Just let me switch back here. So those requests, so the only request that passed through was this last one, because all the message was right. So it was sent to the logic gap. All the others, they came here to the trigger history. And you can come here, click, and you're going to say, okay, it failed. What is the output? There's no outputs. So that's when I said you don't have the tracking of that message that failed. So the only one that knows exactly what happened is the client, right? So it's not showing up. I don't know. I think it's going to be good to have this information here. So maybe that's something we can send to Microsoft as a wish list to say, okay, if the message failed, please let us know what is the message, because in this talk we have that. So I guess we should have that here as well. So the input links, right?
You could also have it published through API management and then be able to see the 400 come back from API management.
Yep. Yeah. That's a way to fix that. Since LogicApps doesn't have that information.
Especially now with the consumption-based plans.
Yep, that's true. Okay, so this is about the validation of the schema in the request. So that's the way to do that and the kind of information we set back. Working with the tracked properties. So this is the guy. And I have my HTTP trigger. So the same information. What I did in different here was that I have like an action, and that action I'm gonna call a second LogicApp. But I want to have some of the fields tracked properly in the log analytics. So I said that I have a tracked property called action input order total. So that's my name that I want to be published in the log analytics. And this is the value that I want to have to be logged in log analytics. All right. The second one is the trigger client name. So I'm using the trigger body to get that information. I think I did this wrong. I don't need this. Yeah. So let me switch back here. Okay. So as you can see, I have two. Oh no. Yeah, I think that's all right. So as you can see, I have two ways of referencing the information from the LogicApps. If is the action, the value from the action, I can use inputs or outputs here. If it is from the trigger, I'm gonna always use trigger bar here. Again, the action or the values from the actions, I can only track from the action itself. So if I have like another action here before this one, I cannot track the value of this another action in this action. It's not possible, right? But for the trigger, I can track in any action that I want. So this is the type of configuration we can do. I tried to make this before because log analytics takes a long time to synchronize. Let me see if it's gonna happen right now. So I have order ID and client 6. Yeah, accepted, was executed. So log analytics is not real time. If you guys don't know, it has an SLA that the last time that I checked, the documentation was 6 hours, but they promised to make this happen in about 10 minutes, right? So you can expect to see the information showing up here in about 10 minutes. And whenever that information is going to show up here, you're going to see all the tracked properties you did from the LogicApps is going to show in this column here. Besides that, you can also use the query tool for the log analytics. You can make queries on this data to say, okay, I just want to see requests made by the client so-and-so, or with orders that have more than $1,000 or something like that, right? So you can use any of information that was tracked, including the tracked properties, to make queries on your execution of your logic apps. So that's it about the tracked properties. And I think I have one more. The split on. Okay. So again, the same kind of schema dealing with orders. So this is my, no, I think I don't have a schema here, but I have a request here. So this is my request. So I'm passing an order as the header of that, request to purchase something. And these are the products that compose my order. What I want to do is to split each one of these guys here in a single logic app execution. And that's where split on comes to help us with. So if I go to the settings, you're going to see that I did this configuration here. So I turn on the split on, and I said that I'm going to use this path to make the split of the logic app. Right. Let me try to, before showing this in execution, let me switch to another logic app that is not enabled. So this one, I think I didn't enable the split on. As you can see, I saw some connectors with this configuration in the designer. And if I'm not mistaken, I saw this happening, I guess, was with the Dynamics CRM connector. But for the HTTP, it doesn't show right here. What you have to do is to switch to the code view and type in the trigger, the configuration of the split on. Okay, so let me go back to my split on logic app.
How does that work? How does that work if you've got a request response?
It's gonna be asynchronous. Okay. So whenever you enable split on, your logic app is gonna be asynchronous.
Okay.
Yep. So the way to work here, what is my split on? Right here. So I have the split on, and what is my expression to split the logic app? So by this time, I'm going to receive each execution of the logic app is going to contain one of the products. And one thing to note that is important to mention is that in that execution of the logic app, you don't have access to the other part of the message that is not part of the array you use to make this split. So you don't have access to that anymore. Okay. So let's switch back again here to the log execution. So the last time that I executed was this afternoon. If I try right now, 7, 8, and then I can have this here. Let's change this to 105 and send. So it sent back just a 202. So it's an asynchronous request. And you can see here that I have 2 new executions. So one is going to be for Come on. So one is going to be for the product 7. The other one is going to be for the product, I guess, 8. Right? So 2
Alessandro,
executions.
so what I think is that Bill was asking is what happens if you have like a response on one of those, or on that message? It will bomb saying that you're not allowed to have that because of the split on, or is going to ignore that response?
Yeah, I think by the time you enable the split on, it's gonna just ignore, because as you saw when I made the request, I received 202 right away.
But you receive a 202 if you have a logic apps that doesn't have response. Yeah, just try to add a response and see what happens.
Let me see.
Just put like a 200 there. And sorry, that's me like tempting the demo god on your behalf.
Yeah, you're tempting them on my behalf. That's good.
Yeah, so that's what I thought. It doesn't allow you to save, because this thing here has to be fire and forget.
Yeah, so because it's not possible, right? Because since this is being splitted, how I'm gonna return information back.
Exactly. I think one way you would be doing this is like having the first one to receive, then do a split, send it to a second logic apps that has a split on, and then you can send like something like a 200 or a confirmation.
Yeah. I need to do
and from what I remember, I think it's once you set up the split on, you're not allowed to remove anymore,
right? The split on, I think it's possible. No, the split on is possible. There's one. It's the concurrency control. You cannot remove. Yeah. So the split on you can remove. Yes.
Thanks, mate.
Okay. Another thing I want to show here is the trigger history. So with a split on, you're going to see 3 executions. So this execution is the original one. And you see the whole message. And you see 2 other trigger executions that actually were fired to the logic app. And those, they contain just each one of the the instances of that split on. Okay. So any other questions, guys?
There is anything on the panel there, Bill?
No, there's no questions on the questions list.
Okay, so let's keep moving. Okay, so this is about what we saw from the build, and then later in the year we had, like by September, we had actually 2 conference 1 week apart. Was Integrate 2018 and Ignite, right? So, and in there they spoke about the branding of the integration platform for Microsoft, and the name that they call is Azure Integration Services. And basically what this platform is composed is of logic apps, service bus, API management, and event grid. So this is kind of the core of the platform, also integrating well with Beanstalk and Azure functions, right? So that's what is part of this integration platform for Microsoft, the hybrid integration platform for Microsoft. So whenever you guys hear this term AIS, it means that this is the integration platform for Microsoft using Beanstalk and Azure related stuff. So on-premise and cloud. So a little bit, this is part of the white paper that Microsoft released, explaining about this platform. So we show exactly what is meant to be used for logic apps, as orchestration engine, even Grid as the kind of pub sub of my platform, messaging to store message to exchange with the several layers, and API management to consume other applications or to expose my service to be consumed by other applications as well. It can also use, of course, all the other rich feature set of Azure services. Yep, so showing a little bit how that's going to play out. So a client wants to make a purchase in our application. So that message or that request is going to be sent to the service bus. Event Grid is going to capture that request. It's going to send a notification to the logic apps. So the logic apps don't need to be pulling service bus anymore. So the Event Grid is going to notify, okay, you have something to do right now. In that point in time, then logic apps is going to go to the service bus, capture the information or capture the message to start processing and doing all the other stuff it needs to do. Maybe use the SAP connector, maybe use the CRM, calling another API management to consume, to use a proxy to consume another web service or another API. Okay, so this is what is composed the whole Azure Integration Services. Always have in mind that whenever we have like code to be executed that is going to become too much or it's not possible to be done by logic apps, we are going to use Azure Functions. So that's the proper tool for us to do more code related stuff that logic apps cannot do, or is going to become too cumbersome to do with logic apps. And again, this talk is still, let's say, in the plans of Microsoft for at least a little longer. There's going to be integration capabilities from logic apps to Beanstalk and from Beanstalk to logic apps and vice versa. Okay. If you want to see the white paper that talks about the Azure Integration Services, you can access this link. So it's a good paper. It's not super long. I think it has about 15, 20 pages, if I'm not mistaken. So it's at least a good read for you guys to understand better what is this integration platform that Microsoft is working hard at this from now on. Another thing that was published, and I think this was done at the Integrate conference, was the first one, or the first time I think we heard that. I was not in the Integrate conference, but I know that they put Ice Ice Baby music. So Wagner can come back complaining that he couldn't forget the song. But ICE, it means Integration Service Environment. It's my environment, it's my logic app environment that I'm not going to share with anyone. And of course, I'm going to pay for the whole environment. So if I want to have virtual network connectivity, specific connectors, fixed price, so I have like a prediction of how much I'm going to pay per month for the execution of my integration platform. Maybe I'm going to be considering this ICE integration service environment that is going to be released by Microsoft. I think it's going to go in public preview in the first quarter of the next year. So at least that's what they are saying. Right now, they are in private preview. So that's why we cannot make that's not possible to make yet any demos on top of that. To learn a little bit more about that, you guys can go here, and it's gonna explain a little bit what is this platform. And then we come with this guy, the managed service identity. So basically what I'm doing is creating an identity for my logic app. So whenever I enable this capability in my logic app, it starts to have a principal ID in my tenant, right? And then instead of configuring my logic app with connections all over. So without MSI, what I have to do? I need to, if I want to consume, for example, Dynamics 365, I need to have an account for that, and I need to ask permissions for that. If I want to consume, I don't know, Key Vault, Service Bus, all those things, I need to have some kind of account to connect to those services, right? With the managed service identity, I still need this thing to be done, but I'm gonna do a little bit the other way around, because I'm gonna create an identity for the logic apps, and inside of each one of those services, I'm gonna say that logic app can access these resources or not. Okay, so basically what we have to do for that to work is to go in the workflow settings, and you are going to see this new guy over here that's going to be disabled by default. You turn it on, save the logic app, and then a principal ID and a tenant ID is going to be created for you to reference later in the other services you want to give access to these logic apps. Instead of doing the split on, let me try to do the demo for the MSI right now. So what I'm doing here is to consume, what I want to do in this demo is to consume a credential from a Key Vault. That's what I'm doing, right? In this logic app. We don't have a connector for that yet, for the Key Vault. So what I did was to use an HTTP connector, and I'm trying, or I'm pointing to my Key Vault space, and I want to access this secret called my credential. That's basically what I'm trying to do. Okay, so I'm going to receive a HTTP request. I'm going to call the Key Vault namespace, try to get my credential, and then if it works, I'm going to send a response back to the consumer. So first thing to work with MSI, what I need to do is to come here in the workflow settings, and I'm going to enable the managed service identity. So just click on the on button. So this is going to be registered in your Active Directory. So an identity is going to be created there. And when you want to enable some services to have this logic app to access its contents, you can go to that resource. So for example, I'm using here a Key Vault. So what I did was basically to come in the access policies, and I added the ones that I wanted to have the permission. So I have the demo MSI application, and then I did a second one, demo MSI 2. This second one I did because I did something wrong with the first one about, I don't know, 15 minutes before this presentation. So I needed to rush and create a second one. I was kind of tempting the demo gods, but somehow I managed to get this working. So basically what I did was, okay, I'm going to create this guy over here. And I give to this credential, demo MSI, my logic app, the access to do get and list of the secrets of this namespace, of this Key Vault namespace. Close here. Okay. The secret that I did, or that I created in this space, it's called, my credential. So whenever I try to consume that, So this is gonna be my call. This is gonna go to the logic app and make the call to the key vault, and then I have the value that I created, or the password that I did, or the secret that I created in the key vault. Okay. Going back to the logic app. So I showed how to enable MSI for the logic app, or to create a credential for the logic app in the Azure Active Directory. I showed how to make to enable the communication to the key vault. So the key vault is gonna accept requests to retrieve the secrets. And in the logic app, or the connector itself, I'm gonna specify how I'm gonna make the authentication. So for the HTTP connector, I had before these options here. Now it's showing up a new one. Okay.
Okay. We've got a quick question. Is there a MSI process in the Logic app also registering application in the AD, or do you have to register it in the AD first?
No, whenever you change the flag, whenever you change the flag in Logic app, it registers the identity by itself in the AD. So we don't have to do anything there.
Yeah, so it's similar to what the Azure Functions is doing. You turn it on and it creates an identity for it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have to touch any of that.
Yep.
Okay, so basically what I have to do here is the HTTP connector should specify that I want to use the managed identity, and the audience here to make sure that I understand that I'm trying to consume the key vault. I need to specify this URL. Okay. I think I sent. I tried to see if this type of authentication was available for other connectors, and they are not there yet. So I sent some questions to this Twitter conference that they did. I think was last week or beginning of this week. And so sent a couple of the questions, and one of them is when they are going to release MSI for the other connectors as well. They said that this is in the plans, so they plan to release access to MSI for those connectors as well, but it's not there yet. So the only one that I see working right now is the HTTP. So that's why I use the key vault here. So if you want to use, let's say, I don't know, storage account, if you want to use service bus, so MSI is not implemented for that yet in the connector. Okay. About the split on updates. So what is different here is this guy. So the split on tracking ID. So this was not available before. So if we go to the Logic app, at some point this year, we started to have this custom tracking ID. So we can specify in the trigger that whenever that Logic app runs, instead of having just the run ID of the Logic app, we want to have some custom value like the order ID, the client name, or whatever information we want, right? They release also this property called split on tracking ID. So let me switch back. Okay, so we had these before. So at some point this year, they released the custom tracking ID. I believe it was by the build 2018 time. So we can specify, okay, from the trigger, I want to get the order, the ID of the order, and make these as identifiable in the log analytics. But we didn't have the split on tracking ID, so this was released by the Ignite timing. So this is another option I have as well. So sorry about that. So we can have the order ID in that, like the first level of my execution, and then for each one of the executions in the split on, I can have the product ID or something like that to be showing up in log analytics. And if you see here, so let me see if I got a new request here. Come on. So this is the last execution that I did. So that demo tracked properties, I use the custom tracking ID. So my order ID is published here. If I go to the split on, I will see the product codes showing up. 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's the change they did, or the feature they implemented for us to work with tracking ID in the split on. Okay. One important thing, you can only track, or you can only put in the tracking ID for custom tracking ID or for the split on tracking ID strings. If it's not a string, you cannot use. It fails. Okay. So be aware of that. And of course, you can only visualize this tracking ID in log analytics. It's not going to show up in the in the Logic Apps dashboard. One other thing that they released by the Ignite was to have like tokens for each. So let's say you want to handle the for each, and you have like the schema for that. You want to access each one of the properties inside of my array, right? So before you had to basically do this by code. Now you have the tokens available in the designer. So switching back to that. Okay, so basically what I have here again is an order, and then I have an array called products with these fields: name, price, product ID, and so on and so forth, right? So if I want to do a for each, I'm going to specify, let me delete this. So I can specify here to do the for each, the array that I have inside this trigger, the product type A. Before, we had to basically specify here, okay, I'm gonna use this field, and I needed to type, okay, so it's gonna be product ID. So I had to do something like this, but now I don't need anymore, because if you go here, all the things that are coming the trigger, they are tokenized and available even for the for each. So I'm doing like a translation from this English message. So since I guess I'm gonna consume a Portuguese web service, these are the same kind of names, but in Portuguese. So I'm just doing like kind of mapping between them. So name, and this is gonna be rice. Okay, so you have access to the token. So this is one of the releases they did also by the Ignite. one thing to say or to note is the following. So I got a situation where I had something like this. So I had products of type 1 and products of type 2, type A or type B. Okay, so let's see how that behaves in that for each. Okay, so removing these guys. Let's try to use a product ID now. So you see what happens. I have 2 product ID showing up. So they tokenize that, but they are not specifying from which array they are coming from. So what you basically have to do is click on it, see if it's the one that you want. Okay, yeah, it's type A, it's the product type A. So yes, let's keep it here and do this for each one of them. So this is one of the, I guess, problems that it has right now, but it still is less work. So name.
Have you raised that issue with the product team?
Not yet. So this is something, some of the things that I saw like in the past, I think, week, and I didn't have time yet to tell them.
Okay.
Yeah, so you see, it's all product A, but I kind of need to guess where they are from. And if I have like a lot of those in the message that I was working with, there was like a lot of name duplication all around. So it was a little bit harder to see where they came from. So basically what I did was to switch to the code and making the code.
And in this case, if you click on the wrong one, you try to create another for each.
Yeah, it will do that as well.
One in array that you're not using.
Yep, it's gonna do that. So by the time you click on the wrong one, you're going to know right away. Okay. This is for each. Another thing that they did, and this is quite cool, is what they call lazy if evaluation. So I had situations in the past where I had this if, and I wanted to do stuff like, okay, this is my evaluation, right? This is my condition. If it's true, do this. If it's false, do that. But the false is going to be available in the message just in a few situations. It's not going to be available all the time. So if I had done this like before the ignite, it was fail. It was going to fail. It doesn't matter if this second part of the expression is going to be used or not. Logicap was evaluating everything to make sure all the fields were in place and all of that. So what they say with the lazy if evaluation is, if this is the only piece that is going to be, evaluated and, calculated to give a response back, they don't care about this. They are just going to care about the, the right-hand side of the expression if it needs to go there. So in that sense, I have this guy over here that basically does the same.
They finally do that.
Yeah.
It was a royal pain.
Guys, it's coming on to 5 after 8. How much more have you got?
I have my 5 slides.
Okay.
So just for the sake of the time, so this is one of the cool things they implemented. I'm not gonna do any tests on that. Yep, I did the demos. Here's code. Okay, I want to talk about first the trigger conditions, and if I have time, I show the VS code. And another thing that I discovered that is quite cool, and I don't know if I missed like any kind of webcast or anything, but I wasn't aware that this was available there. So basically what we can do is to make conditions on the trigger. So let's say I receive data from a HTTP request, and I just want I don't want to deal with all of that, right? Or I just want to handle that request if it contains a specific value in one of the fields. So this is where the conditions come to help us. So let me switch here to this trigger condition. So basically what we have is the ability to add a condition on the trigger. What I'm saying here is I'm just gonna handle, or I'm just gonna receive this execution of the logic cap if the field that is coming the request active is equal to. If it's not, the trigger is not gonna call the logic cap. That's basically what's gonna happen. The configuration of this property is available only in the code view. So it's not available in the designer. Okay, so if you want to work with that, you need to switch to the code view to add your condition. And with that, let me go to the trigger condition. I think what I did here was to work with several things at the same time. Yeah, I'm doing a split on for products, all right? And then I'm gonna apply the active of the product. So what I have in this request is 1, 2, 3 products. 2 of them they're going to be processed. 1 of them is not gonna be processed. So let me switch back. Here. Come on. So the last execution was yesterday. If I try to send this right now, 202, it was accepted. And if we look at the execution of the logic cap, we're going to see only 2. 1007, 1007. And if you go to the trigger history, we're going to see 4 executions, right? So 1 execution that is containing everything, and the 3 executions that just like they are the splits, but this one doesn't contain the condition specified in the trigger. So this is quite cool. What I did in the past with that was to receive the information inside the logic cap to then filter inside the logic cap. So this is going to save me a few actions to be built to the client.
And most important is you don't have to deal with that canceled anymore to differentiate what was a valid and an invalid one. I also tested with the CRM. I saw that it was discussing and works like a treat.
Yeah, that's nice. That's really nice. And the last thing I'm going to talk, it's about the VS logic caps code extension. So just to go quicker here. So basically I have a logic cap in the Azure portal. I call it demo VS. Let me close this one. Yep. So demo VS code. So you have the ability now to work, instead of working from Visual Studio with the designer or from the browser with the designer, you can work just with code. And if you like this kind of feature, it's quite cool because they provided a lot of snippets. So you don't have to know all the things from the start. So whenever you use the snippet, they fill with some information. And then let's say I want to work with a schema. So then you specify what is going to be the schema here. If you want to change the HTTP, get, post, and so on and so forth. If let me do one thing to update this to actually go to the Azure space, Azure namespace, you just save, and then you can switch back here. Sorry about that. So this is the VS Code. I don't know what's going on, so slow.
The demo got catching up with you.
Yeah, it always goes slow for demos.
It's impossible. I think I have too many browser opens.
Also, everybody in New Zealand's playing Fortnite.
So while it loads that, so I'm gonna try to use another snippet for compose, and then I can come here and say that I'm gonna have product name equals trigger. I think it's like that. Trigger body. Hopefully it's gonna work. Product. Let me see if not yet. Really? Yeah, that's the last demo. It's not gonna work the last one. Oh, it's here. So this is the last save that I did. If I come here and save again, yeah, something is wrong with my request. Inputs. Yeah, something's wrong here. That's okay.
That's all right. We get the idea that you can actually now work in the Logic Apps editor as opposed to having to work inside of Visual Studio or the portal.
Yep. Yeah, so that's basically the idea. So whoever prefers to work with code, this is going to be the tool. My personal preference is to the browser. And I switch back to the code when I need to, but not like all the time. But it's a nice thing to have. It's also faster to work with if you like that. Okay, so basically that's what I had to present to you guys. There's a few other things, but there's no more time to talk about it. So they also release like a SAP connector, the trigger part of the SAP connector. They release updates for the SFTP-SSH. They did also add support for XSLT3 and a few other things like HTML pest control for emails and being able to delete executions from the logic app. And tomorrow is going to be a new webcast. There's going to be another webcast, I think, for both logic apps and functions. So maybe some new features is coming up for us to learn how to work with it. So
okay,
maybe that condition is going to be discussed tomorrow, and we have like the first scoop here.
Yep. So do we have any other questions? And thank you very much. I'm just going to take back over the presentation, and then basically what we'll do is we'll put the recording up. So if you've got any of your work colleagues or anything that would like to have a look at the presentation tonight, they can go to the webcast, and I will tweet out the location of that on our YouTube channel. So thank you very much, Alessandro, and thanks everyone for attending. Any other questions or comments?